Hello and welcome to another episode of Something Rotten. It's the book season. This Something Rotten season, we are getting literate. We are reading The Haar by David Sodergren, the H-A-A-R. We've already read the first 17 chapters, but we're here to finish it. Blake, you sent a message to our little group chat that said, The Haar, more like hard to read.
Yes.
With a picture of fucking Statler and Waldorf. Is that who they are?
Yeah.
I noticed you've been getting a lot of mileage out of those two. You also sent them to the group message you have with Annie and Sam and I.
They really crack me up. They just, they're just two funny little guys. They actually live, they are literally less than a mile from me right now. They live at the permanent Jim Henson exhibit at the Astoria Queens Museum of the Moving Image. They're sitting right there every time I go to that museum, which is frequently because I am, in fact, a member, and I go to every new exhibit. I stop and see those little men, and I go, that's me and AJ.
That's crazy.
God damn it. It's impossible to hate New York City. I was there like 2 weeks ago. I wish I had known about this.
Did you ask them about the Game Awards?
Yeah, they said, check's a check, brother.
Honestly, they were pretty funny in the Game Awards, mostly because they were lampshading the thing that we all also thought about it, which was it's too long and they don't do awards and they just show ads the whole time. So when those little Muppets said it, I said, good.
If Jeff acknowledges the failures in his show, then are they really failures? Do you have to make the show better? Who knows?
Yes and no. Relative to those questions.
Capitalist realism is.
That's right. Sorry. Today, we are joined not just by Blake Hester, but thank God someone else read The Haar. From YouTube video essays, from Nebula video essays, another Nebula person, Lily Alexandre is here. And she's read The Haar. Thank you for coming, Lily.
It is a true pleasure.
Did you find it hard to read?
In a way. I think... So, Jacob, part of how you sort of eased my worries about reading a 300-page book in a week was it goes down smooth, or no, it doesn't go down smooth, but it's a fast read, right? Took me a couple days. I'm used to novels that take me months. So on that level, it was really nice. But if I wasn't reading it for a podcast, I might have made it 4 or 5 chapters in.
That is exactly what Blake said last episode.
Let me say, last episode we talked about the definitive moment. If I wasn't doing it for work, I would have put this book down. It's when the kid yells, "My cock." I was like, I don't need all this. However, as I got into the final half of this book, I was like, I gotta know what happens. I was kind of locked in. I don't think it's a particularly good book, but I think it's a particularly entertaining book. And man, I saw it through to the brutal end. And then when I was like, what is all this shit at the end here? The dude writing about I used to watch horror movies, and then someone's memoirs. I was like, what is all this trash? And then I closed the book and moved on.
Well, it turns out the book is actually even shorter than it originally appears, because there's an afterword and then there are his grandma's memoirs, which I think is very sweet that he included, but not particularly interesting.
I think he just forgot to delete some stuff out of the doc he accidentally pasted in there at one point.
This is an homage to your dead grandmother is really truly wild. This is a sweary show, right? The grandma fucks. She has sex with the monster.
I mean, God bless Mariel, queen, but she's highly delusional, prone to violence. This is an homage to your beloved grandma. It's what is this actually saying about your all's relationship or your thoughts about her? Because I don't think Mariel comes out looking great at the end of this thing.
Yeah.
I will say that I do love in his afterword before his grandma's printed memoirs, he said, I know it would make her immensely proud to think that people from all across the world had read her words, so I present to you, dear reader, the life of Constance Slater Jameson. I'm sorry it had to appear alongside a story in which a boy's penis is dissolved by a sea monster.
Pretty funny.
Which is a funny thing to write.
I also didn't read the end of his afterwards to realize he leads into the memoir. I just kind of flipped past it.
He does.
Hey, that whole thing, that was about my grandma. God rest her soul. There are a couple lines like that are just they're on the same page as I am about how over the top and funny this is. Like, there's a character who gets stabbed, and the line is, he had never been stabbed before.
There you go. You'd never been stabbed before.
That was brilliant.
I don't know. I find him an immensely entertaining writer, and I think the problem with this book is actually one of audience, where people are talking about how scary this book is, like really propping it up, rather than like kind of almost like a folk horror comedy. Like, it's almost got some like Sam Raimi to it at times. That once I was able to like see it through that lens, I think I really enjoyed the second half way more than I did the first half.
I'm definitely with you that the second half is much stronger. I think because it is just like full tilt, there's less of a focus on the character writing, which to me feels like a little bit weaker, and more just like total gore fest. What it really reminded me of, to be honest, was The Substance.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys have seen that. Just in the, like, is it well written? Probably by its own, like, it probably succeeds at what it's trying to do, but I do find the characters like very tropey, two-dimensional, but then that kind of works for me because I don't care about them enough, so it's still entertaining to see them like dissolved into goop.
That is, I think that's a good connection. I want to read, there's a tweet about The Substance that I sent my friend that I always think about now, which is from at BodyWoHorgan on Twitter, that says, the reaction to The Substance, I think...
that's my friend.
Oh, really? Well,
yeah, we've known each other years.
They have a great tweet. The reaction to The Substance, I think, is mostly coming from people not understanding that French women are just really bad at feminism. That's what makes them great. But, like, yeah, the film is misogynistic. That's French feminism. and then they say, guys, I'm like 90% joking here.
That's a banger.
I took this down basically like an Animorphs, you know, when I like realized that it was kind of not going to be that, like, every ancillary character was going to be the broadest possible sketch of a human, and, you know, the main character was, you know, endearing again in a, like, you're going to be able to describe her wants and needs in like 3 bullet points and whatever. But I think, you know, as we talked about last week, the gore is where it seems the book is happiest. It seems it's where Avalon, the monster, is happiest. And also where I was happiest. You know, it was just kind of like that seems like what they want to do. Before we talk about the book too much, a smart thing to do with this season in terms of guests would have been to get people who don't play video games that we like to come on the show and talk about books. But we didn't do that because last week we had Julie Muncie, who's great and like makes games and is a consultant and whatever. And Lily, you are like a huge gamer that we just decided to ask on to do a non-game season. But since you don't make essays about video games, really, I don't know, do you want to talk games? You got any, like, game thoughts you've been dying to share with the world?
Got any game thoughts I've been dying to share? Well, I wanted to say one thing. So, this podcast that I am on right now is my younger sibling's favorite podcast. And
Holy shit, what's
up? Big, what's up, Daniel? And they played Disco Elysium because of your season on it, and I played it because of Daniel's recommendation, and now it's like my favorite game. So if you see me tweeting about it like 3 times a week, it is directly because of you two. So thank you.
I've seen you doing that, and then I've thought, oh, we should have had Lily on the season. But the order of operations, it just couldn't have happened that way. Like, we needed to do the season for you to do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Beyond that, I don't know. I guess I got into games mostly as an adult because I was a child in the depths of the Xbox 360. All of my friends were saying slurs on calls chat, and that was just like not interesting to me.
Understandably.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to Jacob, but not interesting to me.
This show, as Daniel well knows, and you probably have picked up through osmosis, about rotten games, about basically that era, the friends saying slurs on Xbox Live era is where we draw a lot of our seasons from. Do you feel, I mean, we kind of, Blake, with a couple months out, do you think Disco Elysium is still like a rotten game? Does that, it was definitely a good season.
But like rotten written in cursive, you know, because it's like smart. It's like a smart, whereas like Manhunt 2 is rotten written in feces, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Do you have you played other games in your kind of adulthood gaming discovery that feel rotten to you, or are you mostly staying on kind of the like smarter, you know, academic rotten written in cursive kind of side of things?
Man, let me think about that. I'm very into games, but I probably only play like, I don't know, 6 or 7 a year. I can think of a couple that have felt trashier than I expected. Like, I'm thinking about how Neon White was more mean-spirited than I thought it would be, but aesthetically it's like totally pristine and beautiful. Man, I you know, I don't think I have. I think I'm tragically into the like the young witch helping her neighbor find her lost cat in the Alps or whatever.
I was gonna say, you're sharing a podcast with Blake Hester, who would say also probably plays 6 or 7 games a year and loves Neon White. So
that's true. I do love Neon White so much. I have some game thoughts I'd like to share.
Yeah.
The mechanic from Devil May Cry 5. I mean, both bodies.
You're just gonna name women in video games?
I have actually.
Women, Blake.
I tried to name one, and I got too flustered and couldn't name it.
I'm right here, man.
Lily, Reagan, my mom, Sam, Annie. I mean, I can go like this all day.
I want Annie and I to do a Name 100 Women race where we both just sit down and do it, but we haven't done it yet.
My brain froze. The joke I wanted to start with Harriet Tubman and just kind of go down a line, but I couldn't get there. I have a book question, if I can ask. And then we can get on to the Haar.
Yeah.
Because I've been thinking about this recently. I'm 30 years old, for anyone who doesn't know, which is a pivotal age, the age my dad had me as a young 30-year-old man. And I've been trying to, like, you know, I'm not much of an adult. I work from home at Lost in Colt, but I've been trying to not dress crazy, you know, wear shirts with offensive shit on it or whatever the fuck. And,
you still get them. You just don't wear them anymore.
I do often buy them and keep them in my closet. I'll spend like obscene amounts of money on a shirt. I'm like, okay, I'm never gonna wear that. And it's like, anyway, so I have this Virgin Suicide shirt, which I love because, you know, that's a wonderful work of literature. It's a wonderful work of cinema, and our friend of the show, Johnny, who designs the Something Rotten merch, did this Virgin Suicide sweatshirt. And then I realized when I wear this in public, if you don't know what that is, it's probably one of the most insane things you could possibly see a grown man wearing. And I wear it around my neighborhood a lot because it's very comfy. It's very warm. And then there's just like old Greek women walking past me, looking at me like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "What? What's the deal, lady? Like, do you want to fucking fight?" And then I realize I'm wearing a sweatshirt that says "The Virgin Suicides" on it. So my question is, should I retire this otherwise lovely ode to literature?
You're saying if you want to be an adult, you have to stop wearing the Virgin Suicide shirt.
About it. I've been getting weird looks about it in my neighborhood.
Maybe with trial and error, you can figure out which neighborhoods it's safe to wear.
I mean, it would be one of those idiot Brooklyn neighborhoods, you know, like it costs like $9,000 a month to live next to the dumbest person you've ever met. They'd be fine, you know. They'd be like, "Oh, I saw that on Tumblr or whatever."
They would love to come on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure we have a huge contingent of listeners there. That's my bad, y'all.
If I was going to say, like, if you hadn't actively experienced getting dirty looks, I would say I think most people just don't read shirts in general. And if they looked at it, they'd be like, "That's nice little flowery pink writing. I'm sure there's nothing offensive written on there." And then I would assume that they would think, if they didn't know it, like, probably a band. You know, just like, that's just a name.
Maybe.
You know,
maybe.
That's a name. But if you
just
were
kind of-
already
Yeah.
getting stared down by old Greek women, then I don't know, maybe you do have to make a
Dude,
change.
Astoria, it's a different world out here. These old Greek women, they run shit on these blocks, you know? Did I tell you about the old lady getting mad at me the other? I'm sorry. We'll
You
get to the fucking
did, and I
podcast
think you
real quick.
told me
Please
on
do.
Well, I'll tell it again for anyone who missed it because it was very funny. I was taking my dog out. It was starting to get cold. It was cold. This is important to the story. But I was not taking my dog for a walk or anything. I was just taking her like out real quick so she could go. And so I was like, whatever. I'm not going to put her jacket or sweater on because we're going to be outside for like 20 seconds. Obviously, if I'm walking her, everything, I bundle her up, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Reagan's doing her business, and this old woman walks up to me, and she's like, your dog needs a jacket. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm trying to say, like, I'm just going to be out here for a couple seconds. Like, I didn't have time. And she interrupts me. She goes, "Bleh," and walks off. And I have never gone back out without Reagan bundled up since that moment. I was humiliated in the streets by this woman.
Holy shit. I think the Youngs would say she mogged.
She did something to me. I don't know what it was. But then she turned around and was like, your Virgin Suicide sweatshirt is stupid. You know, it's like,
Double mogged.
Okay, while we're on shirt talk, I remember that I have this one that I similarly can't wear anywhere. And I feel like you guys will get a kick out of it. I'll describe it too.
Oh,
Game
that's
Boy
good.
Advance. That's good. You can wear that.
It's a Game Boy Advance logo, but it says Gay Boy Advance. And the problem with the shirt is that it is essentially see-through,
Yeah, it's
I
like
see,
a tank top.
on top of being just terribly tacky.
The Haar is a book in which there is a sea creature that is taking over people, making old woman feel young. Where we left off, the old woman does not want to sell her house to the Trump-esque developer who's coming in and kind of turning her whole the Scottish town of Witch Haven into a big old golf course.
Can I ask
he
you all
sent-
something about him? And you
Yeah.
also like visual
Yeah.
picture of him. What about was his age?
Until it was explicitly said, I pictured him like 50.
Exactly. I was thinking like they really like kind of prop him up as someone way younger than he ends up being in the last second. He's like, oh, he's old as shit, by the way.
Yeah, I guess I was picturing like
Yeah.
the kind of rich person 65 where he's still got like a full head of hair because he had hair plugs and whatever, but like, you know.
I think I was
Sure.
kind of like picturing like the United Healthcare CEO.
Oh, well, I pictured him
You
as
know,
that
like someone
later
around
in the
that.
thing.
Speaking of corpses.
One of my notes is Muriel Luigi's Grant.
but I didn't really picture like obviously the Trump comparison was there, but I didn't think like physically he might.
Neither
actually
did
look
I,
like
because
Trump,
I,
you know.
like, no one in the world looks like Donald Trump. I don't picture other people as looking like Donald Trump because it's like,
I mean, sure,
he
I guess I
doesn't
just
look
meant like
everyone
a
else.
70-year-old billionaire. I was not thinking of like a 70-year-old
Yeah.
billionaire. You know, I was thinking of like
A little more
45-year-old
clean
billionaire.
cut.
Yeah.
Like, not only does no one look like Donald Trump, no one in this book looks like anything
Oh, yeah.
in my mind. Like, I would not say
I
that I,
mean,
can picture
Muriel
any
does
of them.
literally look like the Muriel from Courage the Cowardly Dog. Like, that is how I picture her. Like, the old animated grandma.
I picture
I like
her
that.
a little bit like the crazy cat lady from The Simpsons. I don't know what it is about her because she doesn't really share too much in common with her, but that's just kind of like the view, or like almost like
Just
Jamie Lee
when
Curtis.
someone says old woman, you picture that.
Or maybe honestly Jamie Lee Curtis in those like bad Halloween, the new Halloween movies, kind of like that, like a lot of split ends, a lot of gray split
I
ends.
mean, she's pretty, like, I think Muriel would love to look like Jamie Lee Curtis in those movies, just in terms of like physical ability.
Jamie Lee Curtis. That's just what I imagine. That's just it.
Yeah, but you're correct, Lily, in that I drew like the quickest possible sketch of just like it's a guy, and then like that's kind of how I would picture it. You know, like the hitmen that come to kill her. I'm just like, again, more Simpsons. I was like, these are two like of Fat Tony's, you know, henchmen. You know, just kind of like no one.
Definitely. Yeah, they're little stick figures with big arms.
Anyway, where we start off, I actually thought that chapter 18 started again pretty well, where it's, so we've established that the monster Avalon, who she increasingly calls Billy through the end of the book, to the extent that my notes just said Billy when I was talking about things that the monster was doing, the monster has taken on the form of her husband, her late husband. However, it takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of blood, and so it turned kind of back into goop. And then after devouring the two hitmen that came to kill her, not only does it have enough energy to become her husband, but it kind of has her. Okay, actually, no, that happens after another killing. Hold on, we're getting there. But she's hanging out with the monster. She's getting all these memories from him. And then she starts getting bad memories as well from like other things that the monster has experienced, which I thought was really interesting. And as far as I can remember, did not reoccur in the rest of the book.
It is cool, but it's just one of those. There's just several ideas in this book that go nowhere. Like, he had them, and he's like, I'm going to get back to this. And then it just fizzles out. I mean, the Haar is another one of them. The grandson is kind of one. And it's like, what is the point of Mariel seeing this if it exists in one paragraph, you know?
Yeah, it was a nice bit of color, but I don't know. I think he got away with a lot in this book because he could just be like, oh, she's an old lady who's seen all kinds of things in her life. Life is crazy.
She
like
picked
that.
up a head once.
Honestly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like again, another idea that goes nowhere. Like, what is that supposed to say about Mariel's relationship with Avalon and Billy if if she sees these things and is forced to confront, you know, like, she's not like, oh, it's fine in the moment. Like, she kind of has like a weird moment with it, but the book just like doesn't have the attention span to revisit a lot of its ideas.
Yeah,
it's very true. I like that Avalon is a totally like amoral being except towards Muriel. Like, seems to genuinely care about her. And it feels like there is an ambiguity there of like, are you just taking advantage of her to feed? That feels very plausible, but it's never considered or explored really. Just the fact that like we know that Avalon has eaten children, and Muriel just chooses to forgive actually makes her a lot more interesting to me.
Yeah, I think so too. And there is, again, if you wanted to kind of give the book the maximum amount of credit, you know, just kind of like pull interesting things from it, I think the whole idea of it giving her memories back, you know, of like when she's with it, she just starts kind of remembering things that happened with Billy, really happy, kind of golden, nostalgic memories, and her consistent self-harming to like keep Billy there. You could connect those in some way of being like, this is the price of living in your memories, or, you know, that like by kind of constantly returning to those points, she is like sucking the life out of herself now or whatever. But I don't know how intended those themes are. Like, I don't quite know what to make of the whole kind of self-harm motif in general. Like, later in the book, when she's like coming out of the house, there's a line where like, you know, either the news crew or Grant or someone like sees that she's like, her arms are totally scarred, and they're kind of like, what the fuck? And then, you know, like, I don't know, you know, like, what do we make of them seeing her and thinking that? Do they just think she's crazy and that's another thing? It's an evocative idea, and I don't want to say the book totally drops the ball by just having us think about it, because like, it's evocative enough that I was thinking about it, but it really does not do much directing in sort of like how I'm supposed to think about that theme.
And it feels like when the book wants you to think about a theme, it kind of just says the theme. Like, I have a moment here. For the briefest flicker of time, she remembered finding him on the beach, carting him home in the wheelbarrow, this is Avalon, and naming him Avalon. Oh, well, there it is. At the time, it hadn't seemed at the time, it hadn't seemed particularly significant, but that was always the way with life-changing moments, wasn't it? Like just literally asking the reader a question. There's a couple moments like that, you know.
Yeah, where it's just not subtle when it's like, I'm doing a thing. The same thing with her grandson.
Yeah.
Much later on.
Yeah, big time. So I feel like there are actually these very interesting things just like inherent to a body horror romance, you know, like that's such a cool idea. And the one scene of like that is sort of built around the consummation is so cool in that way. Just like, you know, violence and desire. These are interesting whenever they are sort of meshed together. But how deeply has the author like thought about the substance of what he wants to say versus he just knows it's like kind of fun to mash them up? I'm not clear.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that that really comes into focus with the next big kill scene in the book, which is, first I do want to note the part of the book that I thought was legitimately scariest, and this as anyone who watches my videos on a, you know, the up to date will know, I'm scared of things being in the dark in the corner of rooms. And there is a scene where she's asleep and she's like, there's something in the corner, and she realizes that it's like her, like that Avalon has become like young sexy version of her. It's very the substance, like, you know, become this kind of like goop version of her, and it is basically, you know, scares the shit out of her or whatever.
It's kind of like that scene in Gerald's game.
Blake, have you watched my recent video?
Not yet.
I agree. That's what I'll say. You know, and so that's like, that is just like a kind of genuine horror moment. And I guess it's body horror because it's become her, but it is just like, I think of like a very traditionally scary, you're in your bedroom, it's dark, there's something in the bedroom with you. What's scarier than that? And then the next chapter is probably the most like just out of pocket sequence of pages in the book, which is we get a bunch of construction workers who are written with all the elegance and grace of you know, the previous hitmen and the kids who went to burn down Arthur's house. You forgot about this?
You forgot?
Is it possible you repressed it?
Look, a common trauma response is to repress memories.
So they're you know, they're sitting there, they're being construction workers, talking about like, oh, we fucking hate our wives, and then they see
this sucks. All right, I see construction workers all the time. They're very polite people. They did not deserve this stray they caught. I've seen so many construction workers help passerby not get hit by falling debris or whatever. They have fucking shit that hangs above them that catches all that. What this was,
dude.
This was so out of pocket for this dude to just like call these poor construction workers the scum of the earth. I felt so bad.
And in a book about like class, no less. In a book about how like poor people are good and rich people are bad.
Yeah, like that's a really good point. Like it was a bit much.
It
for
really
me.
seems.
It was a bit much.
Our friends on the Just King Things podcast talk about how Stephen King has been using the evil greaser as a character archetype for like literally 50 years. That just like every book still has an evil greaser, whether it takes place in 1950 or 2020. And this does kind of feel in the same vein, where it's like, I don't know, who are the disposable elements of our society? Disrespectful youths, hitmen, and construction workers who are just written with just absolutely zero sympathy. But then kind of the most bizarre interaction of sex and violence in this is that, first we get in addition to the construction workers hate their wives, they hate some hairy-legged feminists. That comes up a couple times. That No woman's ever had an orgasm while I've been shagging her. It's made up. They're trying to turn all the birds into lezers.
I will say that reminded me
Yes,
of
it
Quick Shot, which I don't know if our listeners will understand.
Lily,
that reference,
our
but-
friend Haley McLean occasionally plays Call of Duty with a voice changer and assumes a character named Quick Shot who loves COD and hates birds, which is what Quick Shot calls women, and talks about how birds are always asking
Go.
things. Yes, so
So Quick Shot was working
I
construction.
also thought of Quick Shot. So
Yeah, that little moment of like, oh, women don't orgasm, like that feels, that and many other moments in this book feel like they are pulled from like a 2010s satire TV show or something. Like it feels like a little out of step, at least with our current way of making fun of guys like this.
yeah, it does feel, you know,
I can't get more
it
specific
just
than that, but-
feels like a Tumblr post that you would have seen in 2012 or whatever, of just
Yeah.
kind of like, here's how we
That's
like
it.
make fun of these type of guys. There's actually there's a line where he says, and I am so sorry for this, they start having sex with the naked Muriel monster, and one of the guys says, have a go, it's like throwing a sausage down an alley, which really feels like a just barely Scottishified version of a thing that Stewie said on Family Guy in like an early season of Family Guy. Blake, I'm assuming you also clocked this.
The hot dog down the hallway.
that was
thing.
that
It's
was
so
like one of
funny.
Oh yeah,
just one of those things where I was like, wow, I didn't even know you could be misogynist in that way. It was like me watching Family Guy and like 11 and learning like a new way to hate women was by saying things like that.
A few moments in this book, I doubted the author's Scottishness, to be honest with you. I was like, is this just a slapped on thing? But no, it's
I
real.
also wondered that.
Lily, I'm so glad you said that, because like within 30 pages of this book, I put the book down and looked up interviews with him on YouTube to check his
Dude,
accent.
same.
I was like, also, did you notice about a quarter of the way through this book, he stops writing characters with Scottish accents? The Scottish
It
accent
comes back randomly, I felt.
Oh, sure. Like every now and then, Mary will be like, like you'll get AYE. But like in the beginning of
Yes.
the book, there are like so many characters who like he writes with the Scottish affectations or whatever. And
I
they
guess
just
most
abandon
characters
it,
also
like,
just disappear
immediately.
a quarter into the book, though. It's like most named characters in this book don't make it past the first 40 pages.
That's very true. That's very true. I did have to do an accent check on him though at some point to be like, what's going on? with
Okay,
this guy?
so let's all place ourselves back with the construction workers. There's a naked woman walking towards them. She kind of breasts boobily towards them, like it really the woman strode purposefully, her bare breasts bouncing with each step. I wrote in my notes, she's fucking starkers, which I think is a funny way of saying that someone's naked. And then just like the kids finding an old man and immediately deciding to burn him alive, these construction workers see a naked woman and they're like, time to get to fucking, and at least two of them basically start fucking her immediately, and then some shit happens. And Blake, did you dislike the scene and that is why you emotionally repressed it? Like I kind of can't decide what I think of what happens here.
I mean, there's like plenty of sections in this book where I'm like, cool, the billionaire or whoever got their comeuppance. You know what I'm saying? But this section is just so like appalling that I'm like, I don't care. I just want to get past this bullshit. Like, sometimes he just gets what's the author's name?
David Sodergren.
David Sodergren?
Sometimes David just gets lost in the sauce a bit. And I'm like, I just gotta grin and bear it and get to the end of this fucking chapter so he can move on to the next thing. Like I was like, because the dude gets his fucking dick stuck in her at this point. It's just awful. It's just horrible.
Lily, do you have this feels like a kind of an essay topic that you could approach at some point, but do you have feelings about like the genre of horror that's like kind of teeth, or things where it's basically like women taking sexual revenge on men by way of body horror, by like, oh, she has teeth in her vagina and bit off his dick or whatever. Like I kind of don't know where we as a feminist culture stand on issue like media like that. Like, is that good, or is that still kind of like a weird way of framing sex and power and everything?
That's a good question, man. I am honestly someone who I really want to be into things like this. Like, I want to find it feminist, and I find that it just happens that in basically every case, I think it fails at that. Like in this case in particular, it feels like the way that the men are written, the way the sex is written, just does not feel interested in like questions of power or revenge. It doesn't feel like she's doing this for feminist reasons, And I say she, it's a genderless Avalon. It feels like, yeah, it is like taking the imagery of like female revenge, but that's not really relevant. I don't know. Like, yeah, I like this idea for a video essay. I'm going to keep this in my back pocket.
Okay. We'll check back in however long it takes to make a video essay, which in my case is like, I have to think about something for like 6 months before it gets anywhere.
I think the issue with it is just like, he wants to evoke so many like genres of horror in his writing. And this is obviously like rape revenge, which has a long history in film with things like Last House on the Left. Actually, Coralie Farge, the director of The Substance, her movie before The Substance is Revenge, a really good rape revenge movie. Highly recommend people see it. It's so good. I think it's on Shudder.
Where is it? Where is it in
awesome.
terms of like gonzo-ness as compared to The Substance? Like, is it as kind of wacky? No, not quite, but it's gnarly because she's kind of like, to get into Farge real quick, because I love her. She's kind of like almost like a daughter of the new French extremity. Like, she's kind of that school of filmmaking, which is not like an intentional movement. It's kind of an accidental movement. And even the name New French Extremity was meant as a pejorative. But she kind of comes out of that, her and the director of Raw and Teton, whose name I can't quite remember. Anyway, that was not the point of this. Like, he's trying to evoke shit like that, but like while missing the biggest, like the biggest necessity of that genre, which is a woman who reclaims her agency. And like Avalon just isn't that. Like, you basically just have a thoughtless body here that exacts a revenge. And so like there's no pun intended, I guess, or no pun intended to me. There's no substance to this scene at all. Yeah, I guess it's
yeah, right. Because this isn't Mariel reclaiming some kind of agency. Like it is like, yeah.
And she's not consenting to what's happening either.
Yeah,
she doesn't know what's happening, and she's kind of a little terrified when she learns.
Yeah.
It's a weird little violation to walk around naked as someone else. And Avalon does not have morals. I mean, we just know that this is purely like for self, serving reasons.
Yeah. I think I hate to be this like mean, but I think he occasionally is like a pretty thoughtless writer when he wants to evoke certain things like this. Like, if this is the kind of genre like you want to use, you can't just be this kind of comical or crass about it. Like, you kind of need to like have a lighter touch.
Yeah, it kind of like
not a lighter touch, but you know what I mean. Like, you have to like put some thought into it.
It works, as much as we made fun of like the dumb punk teens who got killed. It's kind of like you can more or less thoughtlessly kill a bunch of evil greasers or whatever, and it's like that doesn't have like cultural baggage behind it, but like this does, and so it like you're just I was like, what is happening while reading this kind of thematically much more so than when I was like, the hitmen are being killed. I also think there's a kind of a confusion maybe in terms of like what it seems like maybe the violent irony should be is that these are the people who are like tearing apart the land, because this story is also very much about like a small town being violently overtaken by an oligarch, that like someone is taking a community and taking nature and whatever and just like making it into whatever he wants to make it. And so I don't, in a real life situation, I don't think construction workers are complicit necessarily in the plans of like a billionaire. But in this case,
I would say like definitively, like, like if luxury condos go up in your neighborhood, it's not the construction workers' fault.
No, I mean, I do think if you were to do some like eco-terrorism, I would be like, I don't want, I'm not saying that they should be harmed, but I am like, well, I don't care about like their jobs if we are like stopping an oil refinery or something. But, in this case, I think they could have served as a kind of metaphor for this is the violence being done to the land, to this Scottish town. But because the violence is also sexual instead of being anything else, then I'm only thinking about it in terms of sex, and then it kind of, you don't get any of that, like, undoing the damage that's been done to Witch Haven. It would have been a different scene, but it is like, that is a theme of the book, and it's, the construction workers are maybe the most direct, like, arm of that aspect that you could have found. And instead, it's kind of like, these dumb guys want to fuck a woman. We'll
it feels
show
like
them.
A wasted opportunity. It feels a little thoughtless. Like, if I could talk for a second about the construction, I sort of thought that they were setting up. It feels very poignant to me that it's like taking this town and specifically turning it into a golf course, specifically like a thing that feels naturey but is actually created by destroying whatever biodiversity was there. So I thought it was maybe leading into a more like substantive point there, and instead we know that there is construction only because we hear that it is loud and the noise bothers them. But the noise is not really the horrifying thing about that, is it? It's like tearing up plants and shit. And I don't feel like, we learn about how they are paid to like ruin everything, but I don't understand what was previously there. I don't understand what like harm is being done.
It kind of feels like, it's like, well, if they were building a bunch of like low income housing, there would also be a lot of noise, but it would be okay. That's I think I would be okay with that. And it's unclear, I guess, how much of a NIMBY Muriel is maybe the question of like, is she, what, is it just that she wants her town to stay exactly the same, or, like, is it specifically this golf course? And it, deeper consideration than the book's giving to it. And it doesn't have to be a book about that, but it is just another question that you're like, okay. So here's the upside of the fuck fest, kill fest, is that Avalon not only gets to be young, but he can make Muriel young. He/it. They go to like the cave that Billy first proposed to her in. It's done all up with candles, much as it was before, and this has almost a literal like bodice ripping scene, where it's not totally clear. I mean, it is like she says she like sees her hand and it's like young, right? Like she fully kind of becomes young again.
It happens a couple times in the novel that he changes her age.
And he takes away her pain and stuff.
Yeah. And so it is, like I also think, as opposed to the previous scene, which we were kind of talking about, is like thematically messy. I don't really know what is going on here. I like this. It's like, it has the body horror weirdness of like we know that Avalon is not Billy. It's strange that it is changing her body as well. And at the same time, it is like really sweet. And I think it's where the tone of the book works well, is this kind of like the top layer is like, this is a really kind of nice thing that's happening. And then like one layer under it is like, is it? You know, like what if you actually think through all of the things that needed to happen to get to this point, it becomes kind of horrifying again. But in the book, Muriel has basically made the choice to like not think about those things, and on some level, you don't blame her for it.
I am like straightforwardly pro Muriel. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like she did what she had to do, and I am so happy for these like little moments of bliss she has. Yeah, you could say, I don't know. It feels like the book wants you to consider the possibility that she is like crazy, but it feels pretty clear to me that all of this stuff is actually happening.
I think it briefly plays at that at the end, because the mention of the candles in the like very final scene of the book, where they either aren't there or are there. And I'll say this book is totally uninteresting if this is not happening in real life, which is how I often feel about media that does that trick in general. It's like, oh, okay, that's a bad story, actually. This all has to be happening for me to like think the horror works at all. But only briefly do I even think it plays at the idea that it might be a delusion.
Yeah, I quite like, I think the ways it just like touches on that or acknowledges that people might be thinking that are pretty graceful. Like there's a mention that Muriel's late husband had possible, early stage dementia. There is the consideration from her grandson of like, has her state deteriorated? And that's it. Yeah, that feels like a recurrent thing that is a little more, yeah, I don't know. I think it's like tastefully done.
I think that another thing that's interesting in that the book does not really make it clear is what we know about real Billy, Muriel's husband's death, is just he went out on the ocean one day and then they like found the ship later and it was abandoned. And like it is kind of left open-ended where she like never saw his corpse. And so Avalon does not say like, hey, I'm Billy who died on that ship and came back. But like there is this thing that she would certainly, I think, believe on some level of like the ocean took her husband and now it's giving him back. And it like I found it interesting and I appreciated that the book never reveals that, for instance, Avalon caused the boat accident or something, like obvious things that it seems like it could have done to make his death less ambiguous. And instead it leaves it ambiguous. And again, I like that. I like that it was just kind of something that I could think about at the end of the book.
Yeah, that is kind of cool. I feel like, yeah, I was expecting a reveal. I just from the way that some aspects of this book are kind of schlocky. Like, I don't mean that in a mean way. I was expecting a reveal of like, oh, I killed your husband. This changes everything. And then the eventual like, oh, I forgive you. But no, I don't think that's what happened personally, because Avalon doesn't seem to have all of Billy's memories.
Yeah. I don't think Avalon has any of Billy's memories. I think they're all built from Muriel's memories. Muriel. I said that so southern. Holy shit. They're all built from Muriel's memories of Billy. Because, like, he doesn't know how to tie his shoe, which, like, Billy would know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's one of the cool things about the construction of Avalon and how I think the book is playing with memory is like, this is not him. It can't be Billy. It's just her remembering him as like handsome and chivalrous and whatever, but without all the little like details that would kind of make a person an actual person and not just the cover of a romance novel. Anyway, after they have their cave love session, Avalon's basically used up all his energy, and they're walking back. He's just turning into slime again. She has what I believe is just like a grocery bag that she puts him in, just kind of carrying him down. And I wrote down, is it part of the fantasy that she can carry her husband around in a handbag? I was like, this is part of the romance novel thing that I'm like, does this appeal to like would this be a fantasy if you were like an 80-year-old woman that you could just like put your husband in a little bag and like carry him from place to place? I don't know.
I feel like I hear women say sometimes like, oh, I want to carry him around in my pocket, you know? Like the innate urge to have a Stuart Little.
That's right. Once you feed that Stuart Little a human body's worth of blood, he becomes sexy and you can fuck him.
Stuart Little, by the way, canonically human.
Have I?
What?
Lily, I know I haven't told you because
Not a mouse. He's just a guy who looks like that. Sorry, Blake, go ahead.
Lily, I know I have not told you this because we only met today. Jacob, have I told you about the Stuart Little ad I found?
No.
New York listeners, what's up? I know there's at least a couple thousand of you. Check this shit out. If you go to the Steinway stop in Astoria, Queens, they've taken down, new, who knows how far back, how many ads were pasted in front of this thing, but they've removed however many subway ads, and left in that station is an original Stuart Little movie poster, like in the little ad frame that they have. Like it's damaged, of course, but it's like preserved. Like you could see it. It's not color faded or anything. It's just kind of torn up. It's so cool. It's like, it literally feels like you're in like National Treasure or some shit, like unearthing a hidden civilization.
So I'm on the Stuart Little
like that
Wikipedia page.
I mean, that was probably put up before 9/11. I don't know. Someone fact checked me on the date there, but
Yeah, I think
nevertheless,
it's probably pretty close. But
I remember Stuart Little, but not 9/11. So I'm guessing it was like
to be fair,
or something.
a little mouse who skateboards is pretty memorable. The plot synopsis on Wikipedia is one of those. I would love to look at the edit history of this, because the first line is, a white mouse looking boy named Stuart is born to an ordinary family in New York City. Where that it said a white mouse is born to a family. Nope, a white mouse looking boy. And I guess that's a difference in the movie adaptation where he's adopted. But in the book, he's just born to the family biologically.
Well, just the idea of a physical woman who has birthed a mouse, I think, is a little harder to swallow. At that point, we're back in the heart. We're back in body horror, I think.
Our friend Leo Vader has done an extensive video trying to determine if the cat in Stuart Little can understand, or if the cat can understand English. Because, like, there are other talking animals. It's not just Stuart. There are other animals that also speak English. But the cat maybe can and maybe can't. Great video. Back to the Haar.
That's a great concept.
Did you all, hold on, real quick, staying on mouse and rats of literature. Did you all read The Mouse and the Motorcycle?
No.
Slammer book, dude. It's about a mouse who rides a motorcycle, if you can believe it. But something I think about in that book all the time, because it's such a clever little touch, is the mouse needs a helmet to ride his motorcycle. So whoever, whether it's him or his handler or whatever it is, cuts a ping pong ball in half, and that's his little helmet. And I think about that all the time.
I mean, because there's so much mouse literature. You got Stuart Little, Mouse and the Motorcycle. Mouse. A kind of different take on mouse literature.
True.
The Tale of Despero. Redwall. The whole Redwall series. That
Tom and Jerry.
Well, I don't know if that's literature.
Itchy and Scratchy.
Hey, man, that thing had scripts for sure.
We recently, I promise we'll get off mouse literature soon, but Annie has been reading...
I don't promise.
Annie has been reading Mouse, the graphic novels, for the first time, and 2 days ago, we went and saw The Brutalist, and it was great, and we came home, and she immediately sat down and started from where she had left off in Mouse 2, and I was like, wow, you are just mainlining Holocaust literature right now. It's like the Brutalist followed by Mouse is just like, how do people react? Great book. Back to Haar. Maybe not a Mouse level of achievement, but in the next season or the next sequence, there's this woman who popped up at the beginning of the book who we didn't really talk about, who's basically like who's trying to buy Muriel's house, kind of representative of Grant, the billionaire. She pops up again. She is like, all right, we're going to knock your house down. We're going to institutionalize you. You're crazy. And there are like people ready to put her in a straitjacket, which is interesting because she doesn't even know that the woman has been harboring a sea monster in her house for like weeks at this point. And so it's weeks, days. I'm not sure how long this has been going on. Probably not that long. But there's a scene that I really like where she kind of surprises Muriel, and Muriel drops the bag of slime that she's holding, and the woman's just like, oh, you have a bag of slime. How lovely. And it's like, the woman already hates Muriel, and then Muriel just drops a bag of slime next to her. I was like,
just what I need.
You know what? I would also not be happy that someone dropped a bag of slime right next to me. There's an odd series of events that happens here where Muriel is kind of, first she's begging her to come inside because she wants to feed her to Avalon, presumably. But then is just kind of holding onto her leg and like splits her pants, and then the woman like climbs into the car and you can see like her butt through her pants, and it's comedic ? And I was just, again,
the writers barely disguised fetish.
Yeah, I was just like, what? Again, what are we supposed to make of this other than it's funny? Anyway,
to be clear, it's a laugh riot. I mean, we were all losing our minds.
Yeah, we had to stop the podcast recording because we were all laughing too hard at it.
I had to stop the fucking book. I don't even know what happens after this part. Every time I picked it up, I was reminded, oh my God, that lady's fucking, she split her pants. Crazy. David, calm down, brother.
Okay, but the image of a woman scooping goop off of like her little pavement blocks or whatever, that is genuinely great.
Pretty funny.
And I think just in general, this book is really good at like goop and viscera.
Oh yeah.
You know?
We were heaping praise on it last week for just its kind of like
good.
Its description of sometimes your fingers are going through it and sometimes they get stuck in it and sometimes it's getting stuck in you, and like all of the different ways that Avalon can goop is really impressive.
Hey, okay, this is if I can ask a little question about like abilities and magic and stuff in this world. What's up with the Haar itself? Like the fog, right? I feel like it comes in at some very plot convenient moments and it seems to have these mystical qualities, but I'm not clear whether it actually does anything. I'm not sure if it's connected to Avalon. I don't know. Yeah, I'm in the dark about this.
In the first half, we were ready to say he forgot about it as a plot device because it was kind of there in like the first chapter of the book and then was never mentioned again. But it does come back when she's kind of fleeing the house in the climax. I don't think it has magical powers in the book. It could be that Avalon has some level of control over it, maybe that it's kind of like a crisis move that it like pulls in this thing, you know, because it's in the Haar that Muriel first finds it kind of impaled on a rock, and then as they're fleeing from all the like SWAT team that shows up at some point, the Haar also rolls in. But I don't know. And again, as kind of like a literary device, is it just the unknown? You know, the like, oh, there are things in the world that we don't understand, represented by this sea fog. Blake?
Honestly, I really messed
up. No,
I
don't know if Blake had anything to say. I was just throwing to him.
I mean, maybe, but I feel like the final page of this book does it so much better with the ocean.
Yes.
It's like unknowable thing. Like, the Haar feels very underbaked to me. Whereas
Yeah.
the stuff with the ocean was interesting. I actually wish that had gone on for like another page, but the book just kind of ends there. But yeah.
Totally. I mean, yeah, her character arc with the ocean is so cool, from like never wanting to go in the water despite living right next to it to like enveloping herself and making peace. I think that rules. But yeah, the horror thing, I think thick fog is just like a really sick device. Like that works for me emotionally so well. And I really like how it's described as both, you know, gray and also having like shimmers of sort of like rainbow or colors that are not on the visible spectrum. I like that you can't square those two. You know, it feels a little bit eldritch. But then it doesn't feel like it feels like it is only used as like a little momentary convenience thing. And we're getting ahead of ourselves here, so I'll come back to this later.
Have y'all ever been in like a super thick fog? Have you ever like been somewhere where you're like, damn, I can't see the foot in front of me? Because I have, and it is scary.
I've played so many Silent Hill games, dude. No, I don't think so. Aside from like San Francisco's normal ass fog when I've been there, but nothing like too crazy.
There's a
I was driving right on the edge of what I think was a tropical storm. And it wasn't fog, but it was like heavy enough rain that you couldn't see, 5 feet in front of you. And definitely like among the most afraid I've ever been in my life.
That's also because you're in a car. And so you're like, I'm in a 2-ton death machine and I can't see.
Bro, yeah.
There's a mountain in North Carolina called Max Patch that I was on top of as a kid. And it's a very rolling mountain. There aren't like cliffs, but it was super foggy up there. And I remember thinking as a kid, I was like, oh, there could be a cliff right in front of me and I wouldn't even see it. It was very, very kind of fun and scary. Okay, so Muriel kind of chases off the woman. She splits her pants. It's hilarious. Very quickly, a bunch of people come back and the finale starts. Is there really anything that happens between those two? I don't
Big
know.
man so hungry. He's in that.
Yeah.
He's in the bathtub just being like, bro,
He's like,
so
oh,
hungry.
please.
And Mariel is straight up like, oh my God, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like she's kind of over it. Which is like, that's how you know they've been married a long time. I mean, Jesus Christ. Bickering like an old married couple does.
Yeah.
But no, that's about it, Jacob.
So then we get to, I have two notes written in a row, which is Chekhov's razor stuck in the wall and Chekhov's perfect teeth. Two things that were set up early on that pay off. A bunch of people come to her house. I'm almost picturing it as like the scene at the end of Red Dead Redemption 1 where all of the like sheriffs show up and just like shoot the barn to smithereens or whatever. That's not actually what happens. That I know, I'm a gamer. But they all show up. Grant is there, the billionaire, notably. They're arresting her. They're gonna, take her, institutionalize her, take the house. She begs and pleads, please, can I just go to the bathroom? I just need to pee one last time. And Grant allows her to, but the nasty woman with the perfect teeth has to come with her.
I have a question about the bathroom. If I can just get us right to where we need to go. The woman with the perfect teeth accompanies Mariel to the bathroom. We're in the bathroom. The whole time I've been reading this book, I've been led to believe Mariel lives in a small home, and thus the bathroom is small. In my mental image, this bathroom is rather
I'm with
tiny.
you.
However, at the finale of this book, we get many descriptions of people being able to take numerous steps
like 3
within this
people
bathroom.
are standing in the bathroom at the same time.
Numerous people are in the bathroom and able to take steps in the bathroom.
Yeah.
The size of this bathroom is very confusing to me. and my mental image. Like I was really struggling with this.
It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's kind of immersion breaking,
It
right?
really
Like I had been
is.
picturing it. I had been picturing Muriel's house as basically my first apartment, where the bathroom was like you could take one step and then you hit the bath.
Exactly. You know those
And
bathrooms where like when you sit down, you kind of have to do it at an angle because the wall is so close.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm imagining, not a fucking basketball court. Like, and also the bathtub at one point, that a body is pushed and it is able to drift along the water, bounce off the wall, and come back.
No way, man.
So I feel like 3/4 of the square footage of Mariel's home is fucking
This is
bathroom.
where her savings went. She's got one of those. She's got like a jacuzzi in there.
Dude, one time I went to this dude's apartment in Long Island City, which is this just like kind of nightmare zone of offices and luxury condos. This guy lived in a luxury condo, and he had a outdoor patio that was larger than his apartment. I couldn't comprehend it. Like he had like a pretty nice 1-bedroom apartment, but it's kind of small, fairly small, like whatever. And his outside patio was like, I would say 2.5, if not 3 times larger than his apartment. Like he had
Jesus Christ.
a hot tub, a garden, multiple different sitting areas out here, and then just like a tiny little 1-bedroom. It was
kind of a way to do
so
it.
like
Sounds nice.
Mariel's home is this the bathroom?
My house is not totally unlike that. Like I live in a 1-bedroom with an enormous patio because it used to be a daycare. And I gotta say, unless you're really on top of your stuff and like you're cleaning up out there, you're setting up nice stuff, I go out there once a month, maybe. And it's sad.
You know what I think is probably below him are different size apartments, and so they needed that square footage for larger apartments. And he just, because it kind of almost has like, the building has a little bit of like a birthday cake build to it, where above him, the building is narrower. Do you know what I'm talking about? So I think that's probably why he has this obscenely large patio. But I'll never forget going out there and be like, bro, you could play in like college football out here. Like you got so much
Lily,
fucking space.
Quick question: have you ever found that your place is haunted from previously being a daycare?
Yeah, where all the children died, you dumbass.
Daycares are scary. A place that's a former daycare.
What are you talking about?
It went out of business because there was an accident.
Yeah, it's called daycare, not day kill. Dipshits. What?
Actually, I don't know what it was called, so I can't rule out Jacob's
the scariest
day
level
kill
in Dead
theory.
Space 2 when you're walking through that daycare.
Damn. Okay, so it doesn't feel especially haunted, except that there were decals on all the windows that were like really faded, like giraffes and hippos that took like months to peel off. That felt a little malevolent to me. It was a thing where like they're always looking at you no matter where you go.
Because at my house, there was the previous people who lived here, a whole kind of like
were decapitated.
There's kind of like an upstairs, like a half upstairs that has like a balcony into the living room. And the inside of that balcony was previously, they had it as like a chalkboard. Like you could like draw chalk on it. And I wanted to keep it, but we had people like paint the living room and they just kind of painted over it. And I was like, oh, well, no chalkboard. But a weird thing that's happened is there was a rainbow that their kid had drawn on that chalkboard, and it's come through the paint. Like you can see the rainbow on just sick. The painted white wall.
So sick,
it's so weird.
That's so cool. Well, when I was in high school, this girl we used to hang out with, her family owned a daycare, and they also lived above the daycare. Like it was like a house that was a daycare on the first floor.
No, that's gonna be haunted.
Yeah, living space on the second floor, and her parents went out of town, so of course it was like, party there. And like my band, we were gonna play a house show there. It was gonna be so sick. Like I remember being so hyped. And the neighbors called the family and like all her older siblings, which like what a bunch of fucking narcs. First off, these were like people in their 20s. Like
ACAB includes these fuckers.
Yeah, ACAB includes your older brother, dude. like they showed up and like we got into it with them and we got kicked out and everything. But I always remember how cool it was going to be. Like, we were setting up to do a hardcore show in a fucking daycare. It was so sick.
That's so cool.
And every time I drive, when I'm back home in Kentucky, I'll drive past it on my way to wherever, and I'll be like, man, I wish I would have played a show in that fucking building. Now I don't even live in Kentucky anymore, and I've never played a show in a daycare.
Okay, we need to get back to this book. Also, it's a good scene, despite the bathroom having questionable dimensions. Muriel's peeing. She kind of tries to the woman with perfect teeth tries to drag her off the toilet. Muriel inadvertently pushes her back where 15 chapters ago Avalon hurled a razor blade that's stuck in the wall. So the perfect teeth lady, she falls back, hits her, I don't know, neck on the razor blade, fucks herself up. She then, what is the sequence? She trips forward and somehow she hits her mouth on the sink and breaks all her little teeth out, which was my Chekhov's perfect teeth. It's a good gross image. It's like when a piano falls on Tom and then his teeth are like piano keys. Like, it's, it's just good and yucky. And then Avalon, who Muriel is referring to exclusively as Billy at this point, shoots a tentacle out of the wall. I assumed was going to pull her body into the bathtub to absorb all the blood. Instead, squeezes that head right off. Just pops it off, like pulling a grape off the vine.
Awesome. So cool.
It was pretty dope.
Not enough decapitations in media these days. We used to be a nation that loved that shit. We gotta bring it back.
Blake, I'm worried that is going to happen and not in the way that you like. I don't want to be a nation that loves decapitations. That's what I'm saying. There are enough bad things happening in this country.
Decapitation nation, baby. Let's go.
So then, eventually, everyone else hears the commotion. A number of kind of bodyguards and Grant burst into the bathroom. Just several good pages of nice, gross writing. Billy/Avalon kind of becomes like a million worms and goes into a guy's arm, kind of like in the Mummy with Brendan Fraser, how the scarab runs up his arm, it bursting out of his face, just like worms. There's other guys who are being killed somehow. It gets kind of hard to remember after reading it, but while I was reading it, I was like, hell yeah, this is what I'm here for. I love it. The important thing that happens in that scene is that Grant, billionaire, is there and he shoots Muriel. Just shoots her in the chest. And she falls into the bathtub, or kind of is just Billy Avalon saves her in some way.
I think he becomes corporeal, he humanizes himself and then heals her or something.
Yeah, it's a good sequence. Everyone runs outside, and then a puzzling scene happens where Muriel calls her grandson. Was this grandson mentioned?
Vice versa.
He called, right, because it's on TV, because there's a hostage situation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and the grandson is mentioned earlier in the book, yes.
Okay, he is.
Only very early on to say he doesn't really call anymore, but it's okay, he's busy.
Right. Yeah, so they've got Grant in the house, everyone else has gone outside. They assume that it is, they assume accurately that it's a hostage situation. The son calls her, and she, gives probably a very mystifying series of answers to him, which is Billy is back, I'm good, don't worry about it, and, tell the people that you love them every day. That's tell your dad I love him. Oh yeah, because she also has a son? Do we ever hear from the son? just the grandson?
The book's about as interested in that as I am right now.
Yeah, so she calls him, tells him a meaningful thing. Tell the people you love them every day. And if they go away for a while, never forget them. They can come back, Jack. They can come back. And I read that and I was like, should we be reading this in some metaphorical way about the power of love, or is she literally just talking about her sea monster husband? I don't know. And then they take Grant hostage. The Haar rolls in. They're walking him at gunpoint down the beach. They go into the cage, or the cave where they were originally proposed to and earlier had young hot sex. And everyone else gathers around the cave. They're kind of like a firing squad, more or less, ready for Muriel to come out so they can shoot her. And then instead Grant comes out fully naked, his little penis flopping in the wind. The book is sure to point out.
I like that it's flopping, but like that image is good. I don't care for the fact that it's small.
It's a small dick. He's got a small dick. Yeah, and I guess it does parallel his son early on.
Don't shoot, he's got a small dick.
Earlier in the book, of course, Grant's son came out and attacked Muriel for no reason. But this is my favorite part of the book, just full stop, where what we obviously know is Billy Avalon comes out as Grant, looks like Grant. They're all like, what is going on? What's the deal? And Grant, naked, walks across the beach to his son and just rips his throat out. Like, literally just it is so it is the book doing a great act of zero foreshadowing, where he's just walking across the beach and you're like, what's gonna happen? And the next sentence is he ripped his son's throat out. And I was just like, oh, it is really good and gross, and a kind of like the questionable who deserves to die, who doesn't in this book is like, I don't know, did those construction workers deserve to die? Did those kids? Who knows? But like, I'm on board with fucking billionaire father and billionaire son. They can just kill each other. That's great. And then there's a kind of funny sequence where Grant's own bodyguards are kind of protecting him from like the other police who are there, who are like, whoa, he just killed a guy. And they're like, our job is to protect him. I don't know. He's paying us. But yeah,
they give him the coat, and the camera person, it's also implied that he's like paid off the media. The camera person like zooms up from his dick to like protect his dignity.
That's right. Yeah, there's a whole, we see from the perspective of the camera person for a while, because it says that there is a funny thing where so Avalon Billy, as Grant, rips son's throat out, pulls his head off, throws it into a cliff, like throws the head into a cliff so hard that it's described as just sticking there for a moment and then falling down, which is another good piece of gore. And there's a news anchor there who sees it, throws up, and then says, smiling and with a string of vomit on her chin, Chrissy McKay opened Instagram, went live, and recorded the most watched video in the history of social media, which I think is a very funny line.
More than Gangnam Style.
That's right. More than Gangnam
Style.
Style.
Bit of brutal gore.
Everyone watched this twice.
That is a great question of if Donald Trump, parody, walked up to Donald Trump Jr., naked, ripped his head off and threw it into a cliff, and it was on camera, do you think that would get more views than Gangnam Style?
Donald Trump, yes, but like if I'm really thinking too much about this, like this Grant is not a Donald
it's like
Trump
a Rupert
because
Murdoch.
he's not a president.
Yeah.
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 And in that case, I'm saying no, not at all. I'm saying a couple mil at most, which in the current creator economy,
Yeah,
not
come on. That
much.
gets you like, I don't know, a couple $1,000 from AdSense. You can't make a living off that.
Yeah.
For a throat? It's
Oh,
nothing.
yeah, and it would be demonetized, obviously.
Did you see that story for?
Thanks to Nebula, by the way.
Did you see that story 404 had about the lady who posts she dropped out of grad school and she posts safe for work videos on Pornhub now explaining like math
Oh, yeah, because
stuff.
that was in context of that guy saying, does Pornhub have articles like Playboy?
Yeah. Well, anyway, at some point she revealed like the breakdown of like the money she gets from Pornhub versus YouTube per like 1 million views, and it's like, I don't want to say astronomically higher on Pornhub, but it's like shocking how much higher. Like,
Wow.
it's like for like $300 she gets on YouTube, I think she gets like $1,000 from Pornhub, which is really crazy when you think about it.
Fear of Dark,
So point
now
being-
on Pornhub.
Point being, you got to upload the Grant video to Pornhub to get the real
That's
money
right.
from it. You can't just put that on YouTube.
And then, so then now we all know that Grant is, I mean, I guess I was saying Billy Avalon, but the idea is it's kind of both of them, right? Like, are they just, or do they they look away and then Muriel comes out of the cave?
No, Mariel's in Avalon.
Right. Okay.
Avalon
Oh, yeah, she's
consumes
dead.
Mariel like spiritually.
Right.
almost.
So then they're both.
It's a cool little scene.
They are
Yeah.
both Grant as they walk out, and then they go into.
It's
the
really
ocean.
interesting. I think the one that is not there at all is Billy. I don't think there is any sense of Billy ever in this book, right? Like if you
Yeah.
are to look at quote Billy from like an objective lens, like he has no personality. He has no traits that would make him him. The book is going kind of a long way to like tell you that Mariel is just projecting in every conversation, right? And so I do
And
think
Avalon's just going with it.
Yeah, but like still never really getting there, like to the point where you're like, oh, what a convincing ruse. So it's like there's this kind of like the ending is beautiful in some ways. Like there's like some really good imagery about the ocean, but also kind of like existentially scary to imagine Mariel spending eternity with like a lie she told herself.
Yeah, like she doesn't.
like
she doesn't
it's
really
not-
know Avalon, or we don't even know
Yeah.
how much there is to know of Avalon.
Yeah. It's a cool ending, man.
Yeah, so
It is cool. I like that Muriel basically experiences like ego death after being absorbed, you know, just like Avalon said, this was set up well, like the years sort of melt away and you just get like lost in the flow. You don't remember things anymore. You don't remember who you were. It's kind of cool. And she gets a really good character moment, by the way, right before that, which is she is the one who kills the billionaire, isn't she? It's not the
She
creature.
shoots him.
She
She
shoots
shoots him,
him.
yeah.
That is a perfect way to cap off her like waking life to me. I'm really glad they did it that way.
yeah, and so you know, the creature who appeared as Patrick Grant swims into the ocean, and then we get kind of there's first a chapter where they're like, no one really knows what happened that day. You know, maybe he was high. Who knows? But in a very good moment, as Grant is walking into the ocean, he turns and shouts to the camera, "Goodbye, Jack. Remember your promise. I love you," which is Muriel talking to her grandson that she had just talked to. And it's like, he was the only person on Earth who understood what that meant when it happened. Which is still, it's like, would he really, you know, he would maybe have some idea. The idea of seeing that happen and then being like, oh, my mom was probably like absorbed into a shape-shifting sea monster, and that's why Grant yelled to me from a news camera. But I think it's a very sweet moment. And he says that he did tell his husband that he loved him every single day of their long and happy life together. And then we get
Until he died in a fucking car wreck, which is just like a weird little detail it throws in there.
Yeah, I like that we know that he dies at 73.
Yeah.
Like,
It's not like, you know, till the end of their beautiful life together. It's like until he fucking died.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Smashed that car and
by the
died.
way.
He flew out and was decapitated.
Yeah.
Pancaked by a drunk dump truck driver.
Usually in memoriams don't say how they died. And
a dog came along and pissed on his core.
I was wondering in that moment, I was like, is this a detail to like make clear that like his husband would not get Avalon or something? Maybe he just needed to live near the ocean for that to happen.
The one thing I kept thinking was like, oh, this book ends in like 2053 or something. I was like, we actually like jumped kind of far into the future here.
It's true. There are a couple jumps forward throughout the book. Like one of my favorite things, as Muriel is leaving with Mr. Grant for the cave, the first line of that chapter is, "The front door creaked open for the last time."
That's a very good.
There's a little bit of prescience.
Have you read, Lily, much Stephen King? Oh,
no,
well,
actually,
worth reading. I believe
you.
One of the things that he does that I think that's almost a direct kind of like tribute to is he will just kind of randomly give you this was the last time they ever did that, and you kind of it's telling you like, hey, this character's gonna, like, either they're gonna die or their house is going to explode or something in a couple chapters, and we'll get there when we get there. But the book is, like, telling you now this is going to happen, and it always rules. Like, it always works for me.
I really like that. That's really cool.
It's great. And so then the last chapter is Muriel kind of becoming one with the creature and swimming into the ocean. There's an interesting line where she's like, she wondered what would happen to her home would the Grant organization continue to like tear it apart. And then she says, and then realized it no longer mattered to her. She would never return. Up there, she was obsolete, a tragic memory. There was no place for her in that world, not anymore. But she didn't care. I don't know. I don't quite know what to make of that, given that the book, I do think, is like, it's bad that this town is being torn apart for, to become a golf course. But also she's just kind of like, my fight's done. Whatever happens up there. I'm no longer part of that world.
My read is kind of that it's like death as eternal rest, Like she's just gone from this world now. There's nothing she can do about it, and there is a sort of peacefulness in that.
Yeah, I mean, she did probably as much as any individual could have possibly done to stop it, which is killing both the number 1 and number 2 in charge of the operation. And she's like, all right, the rest is up to y'all.
It reminded me a little bit of the end of It's Such a Beautiful Day, like a bit of a transcendent
where it's
thing, right?
Like, actually, she's never gonna die. She's this forever.
Yeah.
So I think, even with all her problems with the book, pretty nice ending. I was happy with where it ended up. Before we talk about the additional materials, is there anything, Blake or Lily, that we didn't get to that you have a burning need to talk about here?
I'll have a quick look through my notes here. Okay, so the sort of like stock plot of this, like, small rural life taken over by rich developer or person whose like land is conquered. You see it a lot, and often very effective. Honestly, the start of this book reminded me of like the first 20 minutes of Up, but it's just really interesting to me that it is like a Scottish town specifically being taken over by American capital. It feels like what it's reaching for is like, oh, this is a person with a deep relationship to the land, and the developers just don't care about that, and like she is sort of a victim of American hegemony, And the reason that doesn't entirely work for me is because like Scotland is like big time colonizer. Like Scotland is a historically super enthusiastic participant in the British Empire, you know? And I feel like we've been there's been a little bit of revisionism around that recently because Scotland is like generally cooler than England on the political front these days.
I mean, and in general, Scots do not like England. You know, I mean, it's like now it feels like the idea of independence is pretty popular, and like even pre-Brexit with the independence vote, the people I know who were voting to like not go independent were like, ideologically I kind of like it, I just need my health care, and if we leave, then I lose my health care. But that is a good point, and it's interesting because I think of Scotland as a kind of like, we want to be independent, we're the cool bits, but like can't detach it from that history of colonialism.
It's easy to think of them as like similar to the Irish situation, but actually they were like a lot of the Irish settlers, you know?
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, that's a little thing. Thank you.
In the afterword of this book, the David Sodergren writes that this was very much not based on his grandmother, but kind of a tribute in some ways to his grandma, which is, in some ways kind of absurd considering this book, but I ultimately think it's nice, and I don't think he needs to write his grandma as like exclusively a nice old lady who doesn't, fuck a sea monster. I think it's fine to have that in there. And then at the end, it is like he basically just publishes like 6 pages of his grandma's like diary, who lived from 1925 to 2017, and it's not like interesting, like she doesn't really have like it's interesting in the way that anyone who has lived 90 years has an interesting story to tell, but it's like, it's just kind of her saying like, and on this days we would go to church and my dad would walk me there, and when I got sick, there was a dreaded spoon of syrup of figs that we would take, and I don't know, it's like, it's sweet, but it really bears almost no relation to the book we read at all, other than there's a grandma in it.
Sometimes you see the word afterword and you say, book closed. I'm done.
Not in my book. Stay tuned for the afterwards. But then
my afterword is, I'm out of here, bucko.
Afterwards.
That's right. I did like that he actually had this book was written to the following music. And then he listed a bunch of soundtracks, including Ennio Morricone's The Thing, James Horner's Braveheart, and Pino Donagio's Piranha. All of those were involved in writing this book.
I like that a lot. I wish all books did that.
That's Stephanie Meyer with she's the Twilight lady, right? That's the right. She thanks Muse in her little acknowledgements for helping her to write the book.
That explains a lot
about AJ Moser,
about her and Twilight, and just all of it. That explains
but
a
I
lot.
think she actually has like low-key kind of great taste in music, because if you look at like who is on the Twilight soundtracks, which she I think like oversaw, there's some really good stuff on there.
Not Muse though. Not Muse.
No, not Muse. Some of my least favorite music.
I can't believe y'all watched that scene where they're playing baseball in the thunderstorm. Supermassive black hole is playing. Maybe one of the most iconic scenes of that era.
Jacob, you're not gonna believe this. I've never seen any of the Twilight movies. It's just
same.
Well, I do believe it.
Well, shit.
Well, you got me.
And that's it. Look, that's it. That's the Haar, and that's our book season.
The Haar.
Lily, I know you did not read In the Miso Soup. Blake, I don't think I need to ask you which book you prefer, but I picked The Haar completely blind. I hadn't read it. I didn't know what it was about. Is there any connection that we can make between The Haar and Miso Soup?
A lot of just really disgusting gore.
Yeah, they both use sexual violence, although I would argue the miso soup has a purpose for it, and I don't know if the Haar does.
Both are books that I have read.
I like that they are both pretty extreme in certain ways, and yet so completely different tonally that you could not even, pick adjacent genres that they belong to. Like, it is, I think especially, this probably happens more in movies than with literature, but when like a movie has a particularly gory, style, then it's kind of slotted into a category of being like, well, it's like a gory movie, but like there are so many different ways of using that in the way that, I don't know, the Coen brothers use gore, of which they have, many gory movies, is so completely different than, The Substance or something else. And so it's, I don't know, it is interesting to read these two books that have, in some ways, similarly violent scenes, but in completely different ways. And that's it. That's Something Rotten's book season. If you liked it, please let us know. I think it would be fun to do another one.
I already got my book for the next one picked out.
Have you read it before? I don't know. I kind of like if we haven't read the books, but then we need to make sure they're good.
Okay, make your own decisions, but I've chosen
all right, David Sodergren's other books. We're going to read The Forgotten Island. Lily, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Like us, you are a Nebula creator, where people can go and watch your videos on Nebula or on YouTube. Any particular one that you think Something Rotten listeners who have not experienced a Lily Alexandre video essay would find themselves enjoying?
Ooh. Oh, interesting. Well, if you just want something about like really gross, cynical people, I would say my latest might be a good fit. That one is Project Blueprint and the Horror of Eternal Life, about Brian Johnson, the one who's taken his son's blood to stay young, that guy. Whole crazy thing there. If you're looking for something a little shorter or just more thematically gross, I maybe check out Fear of Trans Bodies from 2022. That one is about like people's fear of death and aging and infirmity, and I like to think I got a little nasty with it.
I think your most recent one on that Eternal Life guy it's so good. I think it honestly really works with the Haar, just in that it's like a gross old guy who wants to live forever. Or he's not old. He's just he's just gross. But
he's got old
every
vibes.
Every time that I like see a news story about that guy, I kind of roll my eyes because I'm like, well, I've seen the definitive statement on him. Like, I don't need to know what he's doing now. I like get him because I've watched that video.
I really appreciate that. And also, thank you for not, because everyone else in my life, as like anytime there is now a news story about him, I receive like 6 or 7 different iterations of like, hey, have you seen this?
I know. It's like, once I'm done with a video, I'm like, I'm done with that. I spent, like months with my head in that world. I don't need to hear more about it.
Yep.
I don't agree with this. Maybe this is just because I come from a different background as a like journalist, but I'm like a lifer. I'm on the beat. Like, I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm always keeping up with my stories.
I kind of wish I would. I find that often, like a couple years later, I've forgotten everything to do with the video.
Sure. I rarely like revisit a topic professionally, but I always become I'm like a forever reader of whatever it is I cover. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and I think yours are more human interest stories. They're about people, and people like change. And even with Lily's video about this guy, it's like, ultimately it's not really about that guy. It is about like the mindset. And so it's like him doing another thing, unless it completely breaks with his like, existing ideology, it's just kind of like, yep, that's another thing that makes sense for him.
Yeah, pretty much. The one like mildly interesting development is that he's now trying to get buddy with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But again, not that surprising.
When their inevitable sects come out, that is going to be so good. The story of a lifetime.
Oh, dude. That's a story I'll read.
All right.
This has been fun. Thank you, guys.
It was our pleasure. We will be back for both the bonus episode that was on Nebula only, where Blake and I will talk about various media kind of related to this, and also the Q&A finale, which you can email questions or thoughts to somethingrottenpodcast@gmail.com. My name is Jacob Geller. For Blake Hester. One last time. My cock! My cock!
Bye.
Yaksoku